are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, September 16th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat. Any thoughts or comments that you may have throughout the show, you will put out a super chat, which I will acknowledge on the live broadcast, and it just makes the show more interactive, more lively between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss today. So we're going to recap some games from week one. We'll kind of do what we did similar to last week, where I'm basically going to, take the time to cover pretty much all the games throughout the week, because just so much happened once again in the NFL. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap yesterday's Bengals-Chiefs game. The Chiefs edging out the Bengals 26-25 at the buzzer. Harrison Butker kicking a game-winning field goal. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the Cowboys-Saints game in the second part of the show. The Saints, are they legit? Because they really dominated against the Cowboys, 44-19. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the 49ers dropping a game to the Vikings and just some concerns I have with them. I'll also talk about some concerns I have with the Cowboys as well. But some concerns I have with the Niners going forward. We'll get into Aaron Rodgers picking up his first win as the Jets starting quarterback. It was funny. We'll get into it, but it's technically not his first victory as the Jets starting quarterback, because he did start the game against the Bills last year and got the win. So we'll get into that as well, as the Jets win against the Titans 24-17, and then we will preview tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. That will end off week 2 in the NFL. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Chiefs-Bengals game. So this was the latest in the Burrow-Mahomes saga. Week 1 was, the latest chapter in the Lamar Jackson-Patrick Mahomes saga. But yeah, so we got to see the Chiefs and the Bengals play, and once again, comes down to the wire. Now, it wasn't a 3-point game, but it did come down to a game-winning field goal. And, how the Bengals played last week, just didn't sit right with me. And combined with the fact that they just don't play well early on in the season, that's why I kind of lead towards the Chiefs covering the spread. I mean, I did have the Chiefs winning, but I did have them covering the spread as well. And I think I did have the score as, I think it was by a touchdown. But anyways, yeah, that was not the case. This game was very competitive. The Bengals did look good in this game. Joe Burrow looked a lot better. So that's definitely encouraging for the Bengals going forward. And, they still got to get T. Higgins back. And once he comes back, that's going to be huge for this team. But yeah, the Bengals played a very competitive game, which did not surprise me, but I just did not like how they played last week. So, and again, it's early on in the season. So that's why I was like, yeah, I'm going to take the Chiefs and lay the points, even though it's a big number. And a lot of teams, covered big spreads yesterday. So right now I have 6 wins in my spread pool. So yeah, we're already back. And judging by how everything went yesterday, it doesn't surprise me if the Falcons cover tonight. But yeah, this game was back and forth a lot. Like I said, Joe Burrow played better. 23 of 36, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, got sacked 3 times. Patrick Mahomes, second fewest passing yards in a game. He went 18 of 25 for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in this game. And he could have had, I believe he could have had a third one, but there was a penalty on the play. So the Bengals opened up the game. They went right down the field, 10 plays, 66 yards, over 4 minutes of time of possession down the field. They kicked a field goal. Evan McPherson from 22 yards out. There actually was a fumble on this drive, but the Bengals, it got fumbled out of bounds. So the Bengals, still had possession with that. But then the Chiefs answered with a touchdown drive, or not a touchdown drive, a field goal drive of their own. 16 plays, 69 yards, 8.5 minutes of time of possession down the field. Harrison Butker, 19-yard field goal to tie the game. So that made it 3-3. The Bengals punted on their next drive. First play of the next drive for the Chiefs was an interception. Mahomes was trying to hit Travis Kelce, and it was intercepted by Davis Gather. Bengals cashed in with the touchdown. Joe Burrow connected with JioSaavn from 4 yards out. And they were talking about him a lot. And he had another touchdown later in the game. That was from a couple yards out. Andre JioSaavn. We're going to be hearing about him because, with T. Higgins still out, he's going to get more opportunities. I mean, didn't have a huge game, but did have, a couple of touchdowns. So then the Chiefs, they answered with a touchdown drive of their own. Mahomes connected with Rashee Rice for 44 yards. So that tied the game. Bengals answered with a field goal on their next drive. Evan McPherson from 33 yards out to make it 13-10. The Chiefs then fumbled on their next drive. Carson Steele fumbled around the 42-yard line of Kansas City. And then the Bengals, they kicked a field goal to make it 16-10. So it was 16-10 at the half. Evan McPherson from 48 yards out. And then the Chiefs opened up the second half with a touchdown drive. Mahomes connected with the backup, I think it was the backup left tackle for a touchdown. So that made it 17-16. And then the Bengals answered with another touchdown. JioSaavn again from 3 yards out. This was on 4th and goal, too. So that was a big play in the game. They cashed in. And McPherson missed the extra point, which turned out to be huge in this game. And then Mahomes threw another interception. Taylor Britt, I mean, this was an unbelievable interception. One-handed, I mean, this was an Odell Beckham Jr.-like catch. I mean, he snagged that out of the air with one hand. That was unbelievable. That was definitely a top play of the weekend. But then the Bengals, they ended up getting a touchdown. So Joe Burrow ended up so the Chiefs actually ended up getting a touchdown because Burrow lost the ball. Yeah, I'm going off of CBS, so it was confusing me a little bit with how it was presented here. But yeah, so Burrow fumbled it, and it was recovered by the Chiefs. They took it in for a touchdown. Now, it was reviewed to see if he was down or not. He wasn't. That ball started to come out. I thought he looked like he was down, but when you look closer, the ball's coming out as he's going to the ground. So that was a big play for the Chiefs. And then the Bengals, they answered on their next drive. They went down the field and got a field goal. Evan McPherson, another field goal from 53 yards out. The kickers in this game, two of the best kickers in the NFL between McPherson and Harrison Butker. Then both teams punted. The Chiefs on their final drive, it looked like the game was over. Because on 4th and 16, they picked up a first down, but then it got called back. It was 4th and 16. Mahomes threw a deep pass to Rashee Rice, and there was a pass interference call. And it was the right call, but in that moment, and against the Chiefs, and you know how many people complain about the Chiefs getting their calls. I think it was the right call, but many people will disagree and be like, yeah, well, another game where the Chiefs got bailed out by the refs. But that's not always the case, though, because there were some times where last year, if you go back to the Kadarius Toney game, that didn't go well for the Chiefs. That didn't go in their favor. But that was the right call. It's just unfortunate that it was in that moment. So the Chiefs, they got a huge break on that, got into Butker's range, and he kicked a game-winning 51-yard field goal, and the Chiefs win 26-25. But also, late in that game, I forget which drive it was on. I think it was on... it was on the second-to-last drive for the Bengals. So Jamar Chase was tackled, and it was believed for him that it was a hip drop tackle. And the refs didn't call it. So, he's complaining to the refs. He ends up getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And he's still, he was going nuts over it, which I can understand. I mean, the NFL is trying to, crack down on that. And there were some plays over the weekend where they missed it. On the injury that got Joe Mixon hurt in the Sunday night game, the refs didn't call it. And it's really hard for the refs to try to, crack down on that. It really is a tough play to, crack down on. But, Jamar Chase was going nuts. And, Joe Burrow even, got in between him and the ref. And Joe Burrow was pushing him back into the huddle. I mean, Chase was going crazy. And even he was still going crazy on the sidelines, talking to Zach Taylor. But again, I can understand it. It's just, but now you're costing your team by doing that. Because, that set them back a 15-yard penalty. And on top of that, you don't want to lose Chase and him getting thrown out of the game either, because you're already without T. Higgins. And, you got a bunch of young, unproven guys on your team. So, that was a you didn't want that to happen. Now, he ended up not getting thrown out, but still, I can understand why, he was really upset over it. But yeah, Joe Burrow was literally pushing him back into the huddle, and he was getting in his face. He's like, bro, you got to stop. So, yeah, that happened. And then Joe Burrow's reaction to the pass interference call at the end of the game. I mean, he was so mad. He slammed his helmet on the ground. I mean, you never see that from Joe Burrow. They really wanted to win this game, and it didn't happen. And this is like what happened in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. Mahomes took off with the ball, and he ended up getting pushed out of bounds, or he got pushed while he was going out of bounds, and the refs ended up calling a flag on that, got them in Butker's range, and he kicked the game-winning field goal there. So it was similar to what happened in the AFC Championship game. And it's unfortunate because, again, the Bengals once again fall to 0-2 to start off a season. That's not what you want. I'm not worried about them. I know there's people saying, "Oh, Joe Burrow looks like he's done. He hasn't played good football in quite some time." I think that's a little nuts. All right, and the Bengals have started off 0-2 before. They're going to figure it out, and they're not the only 0-2 team in their division. So they're going to figure it out. They're going to be fine. But one last thing though. So the Chiefs, they got the win. Mahomes did not look great. The turnovers the last 2 weeks have looked bad, but despite that, the Chiefs have won. But the Chiefs do have a major injury, so their starting running back, Isaiah Pacheco, is going to be going on injury reserve. So he suffered a fractured fibula in the game. So that's huge because he got off to a good start this year, and now they're going to have to rely upon Carson Steele and Samaje Perine. And they're still waiting on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to come back. So, yeah, that's a big loss for the Chiefs. I mean, is that going to, really, hurt this offense? I mean, it definitely is going to be a factor, but I think they're going to be fine. They still got a ton of weapons on this team, and I think they'll be able to piece it together in the backfield. But losing Pacheco is big because, he got off to a good start, and he's been a pretty good running back for them. So, but yeah, the Chiefs, they go on to play the Falcons next Sunday night, and then the Bengals on Monday night, they will be playing the Washington Commanders. And believe me, we will get to that game between the Commanders and the Giants at some point this week. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Another entertaining game, another classic between these two quarterbacks, even though, the stats don't indicate that. But this is another great game between these two teams. But, yeah, it just hurts that, that the penalty had to come in that moment. But I do believe it was the right call. So, yeah, we're going to take our first break of the show now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Saints-Cowboys game. Some of my concerns I have for the Cowboys, as well as, talking about the Saints. Are they legit? I'm going to keep saying that. But, yeah, that's what we're going to get into when we come back from our first break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to get into the Cowboys-Saints game. The Saints, 44-19 over the Cowboys. This was definitely, there were definitely some shockers yesterday. This is one of them. I mean, look, the Saints last week, they beat the Panthers, but I don't know. It was how they beat them, though, that was different. Because last year, they swept the season series between the Panthers, but they kind of struggled a little bit doing that in those two games. They still won them, but they really dominated against the Panthers week one. 47 points. Derek Carr looked good, and it was a different feel with that. But this was a true test for them, for a lot of people, including myself. I was like, this is a true test for them against the Cowboys. If you could beat the Cowboys in their stadium, where they typically play really well, then I think, we'll start having conversations like, you know what, maybe the Saints are legit. And not only did they beat the Cowboys, this was really not a game. This was never really a game. When it was 21-13, but the Saints were basically in control of this game the entire time, from the start. And yeah, I think we got to start having conversations about the Saints. Because if you go back to last year, Derek Carr finished the season strong. And I kept saying throughout the whole offseason, are they going to be able to carry that momentum from last year, towards the end of last year, to now? And so far they have. And they've put up 40-plus points the first 2 weeks of the year. So, yeah, I think we got to start having some conversations about the Saints. Derek Carr, another efficient day. Also, one of my complaints, though, late in the game, they're still throwing it, because he did have an interception in this game. But, why are the Saints still throwing the ball? Do you want the Cowboys to try to come back? So, yeah, Derek Carr, another efficient day, only went 11 of 16 for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns, but still, solid game for him. Connecting with Rashid Shaheed for, I think, a 70-yard touchdown. Rashid Shaheed has looked good these first 2 weeks. He ended up being their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. Chris Olave had 4 for 81. But Alvin Kamara, he was another player that shined in this game, as I have on the show segment. 20 carries for 115 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he also had a receiving touchdown in this game. The longest receiving touchdown of his career, it was a 57-yard receiving touchdown that he took to the house. Looked like vintage Alvin Kamara, which is huge. If Kamara is going to be the Kamara that we know from, really the prime Kamara years, we were talking about the Christmas game from the COVID season. That's how good Kamara played. And if that's the Kamara that we're getting this year from the Saints, that just makes them even more dangerous. So, props to the Saints. They surprised me yesterday. And now they go into a game against the Eagles next week at home. I think they could win that game. Let's see how the Eagles play tonight, but I think that's a game they could definitely win. yeah, I really like how the Saints are playing right now. But yeah, props to Derek Carr, props to Alvin Kamara. For the Saints defense, they had 3 sacks in this game, a couple of turnovers, a couple of interceptions off of Dak Prescott. So, yeah, I really gotta like. I really like what I'm seeing from the Saints so far. This looks like a different team than last year. So I thought. Listen, I thought about it briefly. Like, do I take the 6.5? But I'm like, I mean, they beat the Panthers though, and the Panthers again looked bad yesterday. So I was like, I can't do it. The Cowboys are good at home. I think they should. I thought the Saints would be competitive, but I thought the Cowboys would ultimately cover the number and win outright, but that did not happen. The Saints just dominated this game. We got Diggs, BTW1 in the chat saying, "What's up? What's going on?" Now, as for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott went 27 to 39 for 293 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. The Cowboys only ran the ball for 68 yards. I mean, part of that was because they were playing from behind. CeeDee Lamb was their leading receiver, of course, 4 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Dak Prescott, recovered a fumble in this game. He lost the fumble, but he was able to get it back. The defense only had 1 sack. Derek Carr was well protected in this game. But yeah, this was a very lopsided game. So the Saints, I mean, on their first drive, they went right down the field, went up 7-0. Carr connected with Chris Olave for 39 yards, and that led to Alvin Kamara's first touchdown of the game. Cowboys answered with a field goal. Then the Saints answered with another touchdown. One play, Derek Carr connected with Rashid Shaheed for 70 yards to make it 14-3. Cowboys then answered with a field goal. So the first 2 the team's first 2 drives, they both scored. It's just the Saints were cashing in and getting touchdowns. The Cowboys were only getting field goals. Then the Saints scored another touchdown, and that was Alvin Kamara's second touchdown. That was a 57-yard touchdown reception that he took to the house. Cowboys then answered with a touchdown. Dak Prescott connected with CeeDee Lamb for 65 yards. Then the Saints scored they scored a touchdown on their first 5 drives. That's unbelievable. And that was Alvin Kamara's third touchdown, so that made it 28-13. Then Dak Prescott threw a pick. Saints scored again. Derek Carr, a QB sneak to make it 35-13. Cowboys got another field goal. So it was 35-16 at the half. Cowboys got another field goal to open up the second half to make it 35-19. The Saints scored again. I didn't realize that the Saints did not punt for most of this game. Well, I mean, kind of makes sense, but still. I thought there were some punts in between all this. But yeah, Alvin Kamara, another touchdown. So that made it 41-19. Cowboys turned it over on downs. Then Derek Carr threw a pick. So yeah, the first time the Saints punted was in the fourth quarter. That's unbelievable. I mean, I thought they would at least have punted once or twice in the first half. I wasn't super locked into every single game yesterday, but wow, that's unbelievable. But yeah, I just don't understand why in the fourth quarter, Derek Carr is still throwing the ball. It ended up getting intercepted, but it didn't really matter because the Cowboys are not coming back from that. But actually, yeah, it didn't matter because then on the very first play of the Cowboys' drive after the Carr interception in the fourth quarter, Dak Prescott threw a pick. So it just rough game for the Cowboys, and I do have my concerns with the Cowboys. One thing is still the running game. Again, they had to go away from it because they were down by so much. But that's one thing I do worry about. Also, the biggest concern for me is the defense. The defense got absolutely shredded yesterday. I don't know. I mean, they're missing Deron Bland. I don't know if Deron Bland really makes that big of a difference yesterday. I mean, I think he does help, of course, but I don't know how much of a help he would have been yesterday because Derek Carr and that offense just absolutely destroyed their defense. I mean, you got to blame Mike Zimmer. I mean, what happened? This Cowboys defense has a lot of talent. Micah Parsons, where was he yesterday? DeMarcus Lawrence, where are these guys on defense? But credit to the Saints offensive line because I know I was talking with one of my coworkers yesterday, and he talked about how the Saints offensive line is better than people think. And you saw that. They only got to Derek Carr once. One sack. So I have my concerns with the Cowboys defense. And that looked like the defense that we saw against the Packers in the playoff game. That got absolutely shredded. And this defense has a lot of talent on it. Like I said, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, you got Trayvon Diggs back. But, I mean, if you're going to keep doing this, I mean, that's not good. And, and that puts a lot of pressure on your offense, too. Like last week, the Cowboys were comfortable. Deshaun Watson was giving them the ball. And Dak didn't have to put up huge numbers because, the Browns' offense was just that bad last week. And by the way, they picked up a win yesterday against the Jaguars. So we'll get into that at some point this week as well. But, yeah, I mean, it's not good. And now the Cowboys, they're still at home next week, but they take on the Ravens, who are 0-2. And the Ravens are looking to get their first win. So that is a big game in Dallas next week with those two teams. But yeah, I feel like that also just says this game to me. I think I would lean more towards saying this is a little bit more about the Saints, because once again they put up 40 points, and the offense just looks so much different than last year. And I think we gotta give the Saints some respect and buy into them a little bit. Like right now, them and the Bucs are 2-0. The Falcons, I mean, it's going to take some time for Kirk Cousins to, get back into the swing of things, and we'll see how he plays tonight. But, I mean, this looks like a different Saints team than what we saw last year, for most of last year. So, I mean, if Derek Carr and the Saints are going to keep playing like this, yeah, we got to, start having some conversations about them. So, but yeah, I do have my concerns with the Cowboys. I still think this is going to be a good regular season team. I still believe that they're going to make it to the playoffs. I'm not going to panic on them, but they got their flaws. And that was something that people talked about going into the season, is they do have flaws. And yes, they do. But I still think that, despite all that, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but that's all I have them doing. So I don't have them going on this deep playoff run. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game from yesterday. What were some of your takeaways? Again, props to the Saints. Derek Carr, another good game, and Alvin Kamara. I mean, that was Christmas Kamara, basically. I mean, he needed 2 more touchdowns, and he would have matched the amount that he had on Christmas a few years ago. And Eric Kendricks was a part of that Vikings defense. So, Eric Kendricks, they brought him over, and, Mike Zimmer was there. So, Mike Zimmer and Eric Kendricks, they actually know a thing or two about Alvin Kamara having big games against their defense. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? So, actually, before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the $ icon in the chat. This will help create a super chat. Any thoughts or comments you may have throughout the show, I will acknowledge the super chat on the live broadcast. And it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the San Francisco 49ers Minnesota Vikings game, the Vikings pulling off the upset. We'll get into that, talk about some concerns I have for the 49ers as well going forward, and talk about the Vikings win, starting off 2-0 on the season. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are going to get into the Vikings upsetting the 49ers 23-17. Now, this is a game where I did take the Vikings with the points because I said, well, last year, I kind of did factor in last year, even though this is a different season, but, you know, the Vikings gave the 49ers some problems last year. They won that game in Minnesota. That was on a Monday night. And, you know, you got Justin Jefferson back for this game, and he had a big game. Did have to leave the game with an injury, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be a long-term concern. You're already talking about playing next week, so that's encouraging. But you got Justin Jefferson in this game, and, you know, it's the Vikings home opener. The Vikings have a good roster, so I thought they would at least keep the game close. Now, I did not think that they were basically going to, I don't want to say dominate, but they were in control of this game pretty much the whole time. The 49ers, you know, coming off of their win against the Jets, Jordan Mason had that big game, but I didn't think he was going to have a big game again. He still played well. I mean, he didn't have 140 rushing yards, but he did have over 100 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. So, you know, the 49ers still ran the ball well, and I just saw a clip of Brock Purdy and Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator of the Vikings, you know, talking briefly after the game, and Purdy telling Brian Flores, your scheme is crazy. So, yeah, I mean, it did give Brock Purdy some problems yesterday because he had a couple of turnovers in this game. I know on social media, 49ers fans were saying if it wasn't for Fred Warner, the Vikings would have won by 20 because Aaron Jones looked like he was going in for a touchdown, and Fred Warner popped the ball out at the goal line. But, yeah, to start off this game, both teams punted. The 49ers actually, you know, this was a big play early on. So the 49ers punt got blocked. Vikings cashed in with the field goal to make it 3-0. 49ers then turned it over on downs. They were right there. They were at the 2, but Purdy threw an incomplete pass to Juwan Jennings, who was the intended receiver. And then this was another big play. So on the not the very first play, the second play of the drive, Sam Darnold connected with Justin Jefferson for 97 yards. And, you know, credit to the official who was keeping up with that play all the way down the field. Must have been gassed after that. But 97 yards from Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. And, yeah, like I said, the Vikings did not have Justin Jefferson in the game last year. They had Jordan Addison, who had a good game. But Addison didn't play in this game. So it was 10-0. Then the Niners, once again, they turned it over on downs. It was 4th and 2. Could not get it. But then Sam Darnold got intercepted. The 49ers cashed in and got a touchdown. Brock Purdy connected with George Kittle, so that made it 10-7. However, the Vikings, they were able to go down the field, get in the field goal range, get a 39-yard field goal to make it 13-7. And that was going into the half. Both teams exchanged punts to start off the third quarter, and then Brock Purdy threw an interception trying to hit Kyle Juszczyk. The Vikings, they cashed in. Darnold connected with Jalen Naylor for a 10-yard touchdown to make it 20-7. Then the Niners fumbled. Brock Purdy got sacked, lost the ball. Yeah, rough game for him. But then that didn't matter because then the Vikings ended up fumbling. And that was at the goal line, pretty much. Fred Warner popped the ball out from Aaron Jones. So already back-to-back weeks, he's making running backs fumble. Last week was Breece Hall, and this week it was Aaron Jones. And that led to scoring drives on both possessions. So, yeah, then the 49ers, they cashed in 12 plays, 99 yards to make it 20-14. That was Jordan Mason's touchdown of the game from 10 yards out to make it 20-14. However, the Vikings got another field goal. This time it was a 27-yard field goal to make it 23-14. Niners got another field goal, but they did not get the ball back, and they ended up losing. So Brock Purdy, did throw for over 300 yards, had a touchdown and an interception in this game. Also did lose a fumble, so a couple of turnovers for him in the game. Jordan Mason, another good game, 20 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. So, you know what? Even without McCaffrey, the 49ers are still going to have a good running game. I mean, I just didn't expect them to get, over close to 150, but still had a good game. Deebo Samuel, a couple of nice catches in this game. He had 8 receptions for 110 yards. George Kittle, 7 for 76 and a touchdown. Got carted off the field, but it was for cramping. He did come back in the game. But yeah, he had a good game. Ayuk, 4 for 43. Juwan Jennings, 2 for 37. Fred Warner had a big game, though. Forcing that fumble of Aaron Jones. Also had an interception in this game. So yeah, he had 2 forced fumbles in this game, a sack, and a pick. So he was all over the place. Nick Bosa had 2 sacks in this game. So the Niners finished with 4 sacks on the day. But yeah, it wasn't enough. Vikings, for them, in terms of their stats, Sam Darnold went 17 to 26, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Had another good game, other than the interception. I mean, that big play to Jefferson was unbelievable. And then Ty Chandler was actually the leading rusher for the Vikings. He had 10 carries for 82 yards. They ran the ball as a team for 146 yards. Justin Jefferson, a monster game, 4 receptions for 133 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Naylor, 3 for 54 and a touchdown. And there was, like I said, no Jordan Addison in this game. Once they get him back and they get TJ Hawkinson back, I mean, look out for this offense. And the Vikings on the day, like I said, Brock Purdy had a rough day. The Vikings sacked him 6 times. So he was under duress all day long. This Vikings defense is good. I know they played the Giants last week, but like I said, they gave the 49ers problems last year. There was no McCaffrey, and it was their home opener. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the Vikings with the points. But, I mean, I didn't expect them to win, but they did. And now they play the Texans next week. Look, the Vikings have a tough schedule. But you know what? They have a good roster. And you know what? If Darnold could keep playing like he's playing and you get guys back, you get Addison back, you get TJ Hawkinson back, this team's going to be a problem. One of the wild card teams that I had making the playoffs, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs the way things are going for them, and that's the Rams. The Vikings could be a team that, could go on a run if Darnold plays well, continues to play well. They got the Texans at home. They're at the Packers. They're in London for the Jets. I mean, the schedule is tough, but, I mean, you already beat the 49ers, who are one of the best teams in the NFL, so, I mean, they could beat anybody. And now you got the Texans coming in, who last night, they did look good, but, that Bears defense gave C.J. Stroud some problems. I mean, that game still ended up being close. And now they're going on the road against the Vikings, and the Vikings have a good defense. Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be an interesting game. You got Stephon Diggs going up against one of his other former teams in the Vikings. You got Jonathan Grenard, who's a former Texan now going up against, or former Texan going up against his former team with the Vikings, and then Danielle Hunter, who was a former Viking, now going up against his former team with him being on the Texans. So that's an interesting game, some storylines to look at there. But like how the Vikings are playing early on in this season, if they get healthy, like I said, watch out. Sam Darnold could stay healthy and continue to play like this. This team could be a problem in the NFC. And then as for the Niners, I do have some concerns. Like the back end of their defense, that's something that's been a problem the last couple of years. That's one of my concerns. And just also with Christian McCaffrey being out, like Jordan Mason, had a good game. Once McCaffrey comes back, I mean, having him as a solid backup, I mean, he's playing really well right now, but having him as a backup with McCaffrey back, I mean, that's just going to make, they're going to have one of the best strong duos in the league when McCaffrey does eventually come back from IR. But McCaffrey just does so many other things for this offense, catching passes out of the backfield. He could do it all. And they are missing that dimension of this offense. And that puts more pressure on Brock Purdy. And what ends up happening is, you see it, Brock Purdy turns the ball over. I still think Purdy is solid. I understand where, the system quarterback stuff comes from, but you also still got to make the plays. And you know what? I think the Niners are going to be fine. I'm not saying you got to hit the panic button with this loss because not every team is going to. every team is going to lose. No team is going undefeated. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. And the Vikings, it's not like the Niners dropped a game to a bad team. The Vikings are a good team. They have a good roster. You could say, well, you could push back on it if they're a good team. They have a good roster. You look at the playmakers that they got on both sides of the ball. They got a good team, and they're well coached. So I'm not really hitting the panic button with the Niners, but I do have some concerns. With McCaffrey being out, this hurts their offense. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle still had good games. They still have enough playmakers where they're going to survive, and McCaffrey's eventually going to come back, and they're going to be okay. But, yeah, I do have a little bit of concerns with the Niners. But they're not where you're waving red flags and sounding off the sirens this team is in trouble. No, they're not in trouble. This is what happened last year. Guys were banged up, and they went on a little bit of a lull period, but then they were able to figure it out, and they finished strong, and they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So, this is now early on in the season. This is the second week of the year. I get it, but they're going to be okay. They're well coached. They're going to figure it out. And they take on a Rams team who is just ravaged by injuries right now. So that's a get-right game for them. They should win that game. And if they don't, then maybe you should start waving some red flags and hitting the panic button. But they're going to be okay. As for the Vikings, they're 2-0, and they're at home next week against a very good Texans team. So. We'll see how those two teams match up against each other. That's going to be a good game, I think. And like I said, for the 49ers, they got to get right game against the Rams, a team that they've owned for a while now. And that team is just, again, completely banged up. And I think they should definitely win that game and get back on track. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the game. Let me know what you guys think, though. What were some of your takeaways from this game if you were able to watch it? So we're going to take our next break. And then when we come back, we will talk about Aaron Rodgers picking up his first win back after missing pretty much all of last year outside of 4 plays. Jets getting the win 24-17 over the Titans in Nashville. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now talk about the Jets-Titans game from yesterday. Aaron Rodgers picking up his first win back after missing all of last year, basically. And it was good to see that. It really was. It was funny, though, because after the game, he said, yeah, technically this is not my first win because he started that game against the Bills last year, so he got credited the win. It still counts, even though it really shouldn't. But technically, this is his second win as the Jets starting quarterback. So I thought that was funny. And also saying after the game, he missed, the post game or the, basically the post game interviews, after a win, because it's been a long time. It's been a long road back for him. He's made a lot of headlines in the offseason, but the Jets were able to pick up the win. And, it didn't get off to a great start. The Jets' defense struggled early. I was able to watch. I was out for, pretty much most of the day yesterday, being at work. But, I was able to, watch basically most of the first quarter before I had to leave. And, it wasn't great. The Titans, they were, trying to put last week behind them. This was their home opener. And, the Jets defense just did not play well to start off this game. And, it just looked like, oh, here we go again with the Jets. For Jet fans, that's how they were feeling. But yeah, both teams exchanged punts to start off the game. Then the Titans put together a touchdown drive, 9 plays, 68 yards down the field. Calvin Ridley scored a rushing touchdown from 10 yards out. He had a big day for the Titans, so that's good for them going forward. That put them up 7-0. And the Jets punted again. Yeah, the Jets punted their first 3 drives. The Titans fumbled in this game. Yeah, so this was... Yeah, I don't know what Will Levis is doing on this play. So back-to-back weeks now, these boneheaded turnovers. I mean, he's got to stop. He's trying to, get it to Tajay Spears, and it just ended up being a fumble. As he's going down, he tries to give it to Tajay Spears, and the Jets ended up recovering on the play. Quincy Williams ended up recovering it, looks like. It says Q.I. Williams, so it's either Quincy or Quinnen. Either way, one of them recovered the fumble, and the Jets took over, but they ended up punting as well. Then Will Levis threw a pick. This was on their very next drive, the first play, trying to hit Treylon Burks. That gets intercepted, and the Jets cashed in, scored a touchdown. And this was Aaron Rodgers connecting with Braylon Allen from 12 yards out. It was a little dump-off pass that he also had a good game, too. Both running backs for the Jets played well in this game. Then the Titans, they answered with a field goal. Nick Folk, a former Jet, a 41-yard field goal to make it 10-7. So that's what the score was at the half. Then the Jets opened up the second half. Another touchdown drive. Some penalties on the play. There was a roughing the passer penalty on 3rd and 15 on Jeffrey Simmons. So that kept the Jets drive going. Breece Hall had a 30-yard run on this drive. And then Aaron Rodgers, a great play here to find Breece Hall, who made a great catch. Great pitch and catch for 26 yards to make it 14-10. Both teams exchanged punts. The Titans had a punt blocked. Jets cashed in with a field goal. Greg Zuerlein from 33 yards out. So, yeah, 17-10. Then the Titans answered with a touchdown. Will Levis connected with Calvin Ridley. This was an unbelievable play because it looked like the Jets were going to pick that off, but somehow the ball found Ridley instead. It was able to get through, and Ridley caught it. 40-yard touchdown to tie the game. Jets punted. Titans punted again. A lot of punts in this game. But then, towards the end of the game, Jets put together a touchdown drive. Rodgers connected with Garrett Wilson for 26 yards. Mike Williams had a big catch in this game on 2nd and 16 from the Titans' 45. He had a big catch, and that set up eventually Braylon Allen from 20 yards out scored a touchdown to make it 24-17. And then the Titans, they went down the field. They were driving. They got deep into Jets territory, but it wasn't. They weren't able to get it into the end zone, and the Jets end up winning 24-17. Aaron Rodgers went 18-30 for 176 yards, so didn't throw for a ton of yards. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did not turn the ball over in this game. So it was Quincy Williams that recovered the fumble. Garrett Wilson was their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 57 yards. Breece Hall, 7 for 52 and a touchdown. Braylon Allen, 2 for 23 and a touchdown. Mike Williams, that big 19-yard reception. Allen Lazard, after a big day last week, only had 2 for 11. Tyler Conklin had 1 reception for 10 yards. Malachi Corley had 1 reception for 4 yards in this game. The Jets had 4 sacks in this game. But big news, though, Jermaine Johnson is feared to have torn his Achilles. He was carted off the field. So that's a big loss on the Jets' defensive line. And that gives Hassan Reddick leverage because now the Jets need a pass rusher. And the Jets are probably going to have to, cave in and give him what he wants because now they're kind of thin there with now Jermaine Johnson likely out for the year. If it's a torn Achilles, yeah, he's definitely out for the year. But that's a big loss for the Jets. And then as for the Titans, Will Levis went 19-28, 192 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The Titans, as his team, ran the ball for 130 yards. Calvin Ridley had a rushing touchdown in this game. Tony Pollard was their leading rusher, 17 carries for 62 yards. Ridley was their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. Had a big day. Will Levis, bad turnovers in this game once again. That, took points off the board. Titans defense had a couple of sacks in this game. But yeah, no, Callahan, their coach, did not hold back on Levis with the mistakes that he made in the game. So yeah, Will Levis has not looked good the first 2 games of the year, which is concerning. I mean, I know it's a new system, but yeah, it's just, it seems like he's also just trying to do too much. Like, just, if you got to take the sack, take the sack. Don't try to, because if you're forcing the ball up like he has the first 2 weeks, it's going to cost you, and it has. Because last week, the Titans could have won if he just would have took this. I mean, if he just would have took the sack instead of giving up that pick 6. I mean, Titans could have won that game. I mean, you left points on the board with these turnovers here. It's not good. So they got to clean that up. But yeah, he has not looked great the first 2 weeks. But as for the Jets, that's a big win. Because, you fall to 0-2, I mean, this thing is really going to start to unravel. They got a tough game on Thursday against the Patriots. The Patriots did lose to Seattle, but they, that game went to overtime. The Patriots are not going to be a pushover. They are really going to bring it to you. And that's a division rival. So, it might be a game that you look at and say, the Patriots aren't that good. The Jets should be able to roll over them. Not so fast. The Patriots are going to play the Jets tough on Thursday. But this is a step in the right direction. Rodgers, again, looked efficient. Missed some throws, of course, throughout the game. But, again, made some great plays. I mean, the pass to Breece Hall for the touchdown was nice. That pitch and catch to Mike Williams late in the game, that was huge. Even though that was Mike Williams' only catch of the game, that was a big play. And, this running back, Allen, looks good. It wasn't really a factor in the game last week against the Niners, but was a factor here. That could be a nice duo that they got between him and Breece Hall. That's huge. So there's things to like with the Jets in the direction that they're going in. But I still have my concerns about the defense. The defense just does not look the same as it did last year, so that's a bit of a problem. So the Jets are going to have to figure it out, and especially now with Jermaine Johnson, being out for the year, most likely they gotta figure it out. And you might have to pay Hassan Reddick. That's what you're gonna have to do. You might have to give him what he wants. So, but it was just nice to see Rodgers get a win. He has. I mean, look, he hasn't been spectacular, but you know what? He's been good enough. The Jets are 1-1. Last week they lost to the Niners. Not many teams are going to beat the Niners on their home opener to start off the year. So, but I mean, it's just how they lost with Jordan Mason just completely shredding him. But yeah, there's things they got to clean up. But you know what? This is a team that could get better and better as the season goes on. Rodgers is only going to get better. Getting all that rust off, and you just got to hope that the defense puts it all together, because that's what can make this Jets team, go far this year is their defense. With Rodgers playing, he doesn't have to be the Aaron Rodgers of old, just has to be good enough. The defense has to be what it has been the last couple of years. There's still things they got to clean up. If this defense could play up to its potential, like it has in the past, the Jets are going to be only that better. And just imagine when Aaron Rodgers starts throwing for, can he get to 300 yards? Because, in 2022, he hasn't, he didn't at all. So I'd like to see if he can get to that, at some point this year, which I think he will. I think he will. But, yeah, he's just got to keep dusting that rust off. Get those cobwebs out. But he has he hasn't looked bad. He has been playing. He's been playing decent these first 2 games. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. Like I said, they got the Patriots, and then they got the Broncos the following week. So the Jets should be 3-1. Now you go up against the Vikings in London. That's a tougher game. We'll see what happens there, but they should be 3-1 after this stretch. There's a lot to like with the Jets. Again, some concerns there. And then as for the Titans, Will Levis has got to, kind of tone it down with trying to play hero ball. Calvin Ridley had a good game. Tony Pollard has looked good the first 2 games. So there's things to like with the Titans. but their quarterback has got to start playing better. So, yeah. And it's funny how people are saying, look at Malik Willis picking up a win yesterday for the Packers, and it's like maybe they made the wrong move. But, yeah, that's kind of an overreaction a little bit. So, but, props to the Packers for getting a win yesterday with no Jordan Love. And it's possible Jordan Love could be back against the Titans because that's when the Packers, that's who the Titans play next week. So, or we could see Malik Willis take on Will Levis. That could be a nice little storyline going into the week. Former Titans quarterback coming back to take on his former team. But we'll see. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. Again, congratulations to Aaron Rodgers for picking up his win. It was nice to see that. At least one New York team, represented the city and the state, nicely. Well, Buffalo plays in New York. But at least one of the local teams here, was able to, give us a win. While the other one, we'll get into the other one. Not today, but we'll get into it. The other one kind of embarrassed us once again. So we're going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Eagles-Falcons game tonight, preview that. So for one final time today, stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to preview tonight's Monday night game between the Eagles and the Falcons. Last week, the Eagles got a 34-29 victory over the Packers in Brazil. The Falcons losing that game to the Steelers at home, where Kirk Cousins and the offense had to use the silent count because the stadium was so loud, taken over by Steelers fans. So, and Kirk Cousins did not look great. He did not look great in that game. And the Eagles, I mean, they did win. They had big plays to A.J. Brown. Saquon Barkley was unbelievable. But, Jalen Hurts I didn't think looked great. And the defense, gave up a lot of points. So, it's going to be interesting what happens with this game. I mean, judging by the upsets and teams covering yesterday, I think the Falcons could be the latest in covering. But it is a Monday night game, and Kirk Cousins does struggle in prime time. However, last year when he was a member of the Vikings, did have a big game against the Eagles. Although this is with a new team, and he's coming off an Achilles injury. So, yeah, I don't really know what to expect out of this game. I think the Falcons' defense, could give the Eagles some problems, especially because there is going to be no A.J. Brown in this game. So that does make a huge difference. I expect Saquon Barkley to play well here. I don't think he's going to have, 3 touchdowns like he did last week, but I think Barkley's going to put up a good game once again. They're going to have to rely upon him with the absence of A.J. Brown, as well as Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is going to step in and be that number 1 receiver. I mean, we talk about how they're a 1A and 1B. Dallas Goedert is going to be more involved. Jahan Dotson, who really was a non-factor last week against the Packers, they traded for him from the Commanders. He's going to be more involved in this offense. So, I expect the Eagles to still win this game. But, yeah, I didn't really like what I said. Last week, it was kind of a mess for them, even though they got the win. Because, again, Jalen Hurts turned the ball over, had a bad interception. Again, the defense wasn't great. Let's see how they are. I mean, it is their home opener, so we'll see what happens tonight. I still expect them to get the win here. Now, for the Falcons side of things, how is Kirk Cousins going to play now in game number 2? It was not great in week 1. TJ Watt and that Steelers defense was all over him. That forced him into some bad turnovers. Is this going to be better? I think he'll look a little bit better. I think he's another guy that's got to get that rust off. Although, I mean, you look at Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is younger than Aaron Rodgers. Well, Aaron Rodgers looked, in the first 2 games here, he's looked better coming off of the Achilles at 40 years old, as opposed to Kirk Cousins, who's younger. But again, you could also say the timelines too, because Rodgers got hurt in the first game of the year. Kirk Cousins got hurt more towards the middle of the season. So you could also look at that as well. But they keep saying Kirk Cousins is fully healthy. So, we'll see how it goes in this game. I expect the Eagles to win. I think the Falcons will look a little bit better on offense. It's up to the Falcons defense. I mean, because if Jalen Hurts is turning the ball over like he did last week, and the Falcons defense can cash in on some of that, help this offense out, give them short field, good field position, take some pressure off of Kirk Cousins. That would be good. They got to rely upon Bijan Robinson, which I hope they don't, because I'm going against him in fantasy in one of my leagues, and I do have Kirk Cousins. It's weird because, so I'm up by basically 15 points in my redraft league, and I have Kirk Cousins, and my friend has Bijan Robinson and Drake London. So it's kind of interesting how this matchup is, and I need to get this win because I do not want to go to 0-2. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think the Falcons' offense will look a little bit better. Kirk Cousins still has to get into a rhythm with, his new weapons. Drake London was not great in week 1. Wasn't really impactful. Kyle Pitts did score a touchdown. The Eagles' defense is going to be focusing on him and Bijan Robinson. I think the key for them is, try to make this offense one-dimensional. Take Bijan out of the game and make Kirk Cousins, throw the ball a bunch of times, with him coming off of that Achilles injury. So we'll see what happens. But I think the Eagles will win this game. I just don't know, is it going to be close? Are the Eagles going to blow them out? I think it's going to be somewhat of a close game. I still got them winning. I guess I'm going to say the Eagles win. I'm going to say 23-16. I'm going to say that's the final score because I'm still trying to pick it around where like the Falcons are not covering in the spread. I'll say they lose by 7. I think Kirk Cousins will look a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Falcons will lose this game. But judging by how this week has gone, nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me. And I don't even think and the Falcons are not a bad team. They got to play up to their potential. And it's going to take some time for them to gel and Kirk Cousins, recovering from the Achilles injury, for him to get his confidence back. But I do think they'll eventually figure it out. But got to figure it out soon because the way, the Buccaneers and the Saints are playing, you can't afford to, go 0-2 to start off the year. And then on top of that, you got the Chiefs the following week. So the Falcons could be looking at 0-3. So this is a big game for them. So, and the Buccaneers, they got the Broncos next week. The Saints actually have the Eagles next week at home. And I said, the Saints got a good shot to win that game. So the Falcons, they got to, this is a big game for them. So they're gonna have to figure it out. But I still think the Eagles are gonna get the win here. But we'll see. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think, though. about this game. How do you see it playing out? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, it was another crazy week in the NFL already in week 2. I mean, a lot of upsets. I mean, in regular pick'em, I think I went like 5-10, I think. Because I had the Ravens, I had the Cowboys, I had the Niners. Who else did I have? I had the Giants, which, again, we'll get into that tomorrow. All right, so so right now I'm 6-9. So if the Eagles win tonight, go 7-9. I mean, it's not terrible, but yeah, I had the Cowboys. I also had the Lions too. I had the Colts. I had the Patriots trying to pull off the upset. The Jaguars, the Giants, the Ravens, the Rams. Yeah, it was a rough week in the pick'em in week 2. So yeah, hopefully I bounce back next week there. And this is just regular, like, straight up. This is not with the spreads. The spreads, I mean, again, I had the Ravens. They looked like they were going to win. They didn't. The Raiders ended up not just backdooring, but they ended up winning the game, which was the only leg of my parlay that I did that did not hit. Because I did some money lines and the Broncos-Steelers under. So yeah, I had Broncos-Steelers under. I had, which I think was under 36.5. Chiefs money line, Texans money line, Chargers money line, and Ravens money line. Ravens money line was the only leg that didn't hit, and I would have won, I think, like $20. I want to say, which again, it's not. I'm not betting outrageous amounts of money, but it's just it's annoying that one leg doesn't hit. And the Ravens had the lead; they were up by 10 points and they blew it. We'll get into it tomorrow. So that happened. Yeah, but I had the Ravens, the Giants. I mean, we'll get into it tomorrow, or either tomorrow or Wednesday. I was hoping that the Jets would at least win by a field goal, but they didn't, because Braylon Allen took in the touchdown, and that put them up by 7. And I'm like, forget this, because they were covering most of the game. The Texans, they had their opportunity to, put away the Bears, but that game still ended up being close. It ended up being 19-13, the final score, and the spread was 6.5, so didn't get that. So I'm hoping that the Eagles can win and cover tonight, so at least I can finish with my 7, just like last week. But again, we're already back to, with the spread pool being back, we're already back to what we usually do. You get 7, between 6 and 8 wins. It's annoying. But you know what? That's what happens. And we still got ways to go. But, now you think after what you saw this week, you're like, oh, I think I got it. No, next week. See, if the games lasted like 3 quarters, you'd be fine. I would be fine. But they don't. They're 4 quarters, and there's always a backdoor cover or something that ends up messing me up. And I was getting nervous with the Steelers game, because the Steelers game is the only game I won in the late window. Because I had the Chiefs, they didn't cover. I had the Rams, and they got blown out by the Cardinals. And we're going to talk about that game tomorrow, because Marvin Harrison Jr. had a big game yesterday after not doing much in his debut against the Bills last week. Yeah, that Cardinals offense looked really good. So, that could be a team that, that could be a wild card team. And despite the Bears losing last night, I mean, they do have some problems on the offensive line, but that defense is good. That defense is good, and I think Caleb Williams is going to figure it out. He's only going to get better as we go through the season, because you did see, the flashes last night. But we'll get into that as well. We're going to get into the Ravens tomorrow. We'll get into the Texans-Bears game. Some games we didn't get to today that we'll cover tomorrow. There's still a lot. And, of course, you got to recap the game tonight, tomorrow as well. So, yeah, another crazy week in the NFL. A lot of upsets. So, with that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. And, starting to get back to 100% now. I didn't sound like I was crying throughout the show. The cold thing that I still got, still lingering, but definitely the best that I have felt in the last couple weeks, or a few weeks, I should say. So that's encouraging. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And, yeah, so until next time, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.